When we think of habits, we think of mundane routines in our everyday lives. What most people don't realize is that those habits are at the core of our existence, and understanding how they work is key to achieving success. In The Power of Habit 2012, Charles Duhigg explains what they are, why they exist, how they are formed, and most importantly, how to change them. Many studies and much research back up a new understanding of habits and the power they have over our lives. Habits have the potential to completely transform individuals, companies, and societies. They can be good, but they also can be dangerous. Failure to understand and steer them in the right direction has led to the downfall of many, from victims of substance abuse to large organizations. On the other hand, harnessing their power can lead to evolution and prosperity. Habits are not destiny. Your habits can be ignored, changed, or replaced. When you develop a habit, your brain doesn't have to fully participate in decision-making processes anymore. Habits help your brain save effort. The process of creating a habit is called the habit loop. It has 3 steps: cue, routine, and reward. The cue is any trigger that makes your brain go into automation. The routine is the repetition of a certain action, and it can be physical or mental. The reward is the positive result of your action that helps your brain decide to stick with this habit. This loop, if repeated enough times, will create a habit. The benefit of having a habit and not needing your brain to make every decision consciously is that you can divert your energy and focus to other tasks. Usually, habits are created automatically. Your brain is always looking for patterns to try to establish a routine. However, you have the power to deliberately change or create habits with conscious effort, though it's not as easy as the 1-2-3 loop makes it seem. The parts of our brain that control our habits and our memories are separate. One man named Eugene, who suffered damage in the part of his brain responsible for memory, was able to function nearly normally due to the habits embedded in his brain. Habits are not always good. We can create bad habits just as easily as good ones. And the problem is that habits are encoded into our brain structures, so we cannot get rid of them fully without exerting great effort. By becoming conscious of the habit loop and taking control over it, we can overpower our bad behavior. If we create a habit out of this, slowly but surely we replace the bad habit with a good one that becomes just as automatic. One of the foundations of advertising is trying to create habits among customers, so that they buy a certain product out of habit without needing to fully consider it every time. Advertising a product using the habit loop is not enough. The elements of the loop, cue, routine, and reward are necessary components for the formation of a habit, but they alone don't create one. There needs to be some sort of fuel that powers a habit. This fuel is craving. Craving is the force that makes the reward element worth it. No matter how good the reward is, if there is no craving for it, the habit won't stick. Therefore, to create a habit, you should combine a cue, routine, and reward with a sense of craving that drives the habit loop. You should find a simple, clear cue and pair it with a similarly obvious reward that triggers neurological craving. Craving can also be defined as expectation. Your brain should be expecting a certain reward after doing the action. The reward could be material or mental, something as simple as the sense of accomplishment you feel after jogging for half an hour. Consumers are accustomed to toothpaste advertisements that promise a Hollywood smile and entice them with the reward of having beautiful teeth. However, the Pepsodent brand added chemicals that created a satisfying tingle in the mouth after using their toothpaste. Consumers started craving the tingly sensation and associated it with the brand. The mental reward of wanting healthy teeth wasn't enough. The physical reward was what created the habit. Another product that used the craving mechanism to achieve success is Febreze air fresheners. Before it became a household name, Febreze was struggling because the reward it presented was removing unpleasant smells. After Febreze changed their marketing to promote the product's ability to give a room a clean air feeling, sales skyrocketed. Consumers now crave the feeling of fresh air in a room. There is no such thing as making a habit disappear. To change a habit, you need to replace it with another. Replacing a habit comes down to keeping old cues and rewards, but changing the routine. By doing so, it's easier to change most unwanted behaviors. Humans have loss aversion. We prefer not losing something over gaining something new. By keeping the cue and reward intact, we are not losing anything by trying new routines or actions, so no defense mechanisms are triggered. For example, nail biters are advised to put their hand away or grab a pen with it, then rub their arms for physical stimulation. That way, the cue and reward for nail biting, which are the need to fidget and the physical stimulation, stay the same. In anonymous alcoholics meetings, drinking habits are changed through this technique. Alcoholics learn which rewards they seek from drinking, such as escape, relaxation, or release, and are introduced to ways of achieving them without resorting to intoxication. In fact, the reason alcoholics seek help is because drinking itself and its dire consequences are hurting them. Thus, finding new routines to satisfy their old cravings is greatly beneficial. Believing in something is a great way of breaking habits. Many people are able to overcome substance abuse when they start believing in some form of spiritual being or deity. Their belief makes it easier for them to think they can change, and that things can get better. Belief doesn't have to be spiritual. It can also come in the form of approval from other people. When we see ourselves change in the eyes of others, we get concrete proof that our efforts are paying off, and we're more likely to stick to our new habits. A keystone habit is a habit that, once changed, can trigger a domino effect of other habits changing as well. It's a crucial habit which has the power to change your entire life. Humans are addicted to small wins and triumphs. If you are able to change one thing about your life, you will be encouraged to change one other thing, and then another, and slowly become the person you've always wanted to be. Change is contagious, so once we change one thing in our life for the better, we start wanting to change other things to match this improved lifestyle. Small wins lead to more small wins and have the power to fuel big transformations. One of the most universal keystone habits is exercising. People who get into the habit of exercise very often change their other unhealthy habits and start eating better, sleeping better, having better posture, and more. One keystone habit for family life is eating dinner together, as studies have shown families who do so have better relationships, with kids doing better at school, having better emotional intelligence, and increasing their confidence. One example of a simple keystone habit that can lead to big changes was found in a 29 weight loss study. Participants were not asked to make any changes to their diets, only to keep a food log of what they ate daily. This habit by itself was enough to make participants notice unhealthy patterns in their eating and strive to make changes. It's hard to get every single thing right from the start, and trying to change too much often results in failure. Picking one keystone habit and sticking to it will result in a chain reaction that will succeed in overhauling your life, just not all at once. It's not easy to identify the keystone habit you need to change in your life. It won't always be obvious. The key is to try and keep trying. One of the most essential keystone habits is cultivating strong willpower. It is one of the best precursors for success. Think of your willpower as a limited resource that needs to be used wisely, or a muscle that gets tired. Normally, you have the most willpower in the morning. As the day goes by and you use it to make decisions, your willpower drains. For this reason, it's a good idea to do all the important things you need to do early in the day. If you waste your willpower on doing boring, unimportant tasks, you'll barely have any left for the important ones. The more you train your willpower, the more control you will have over what you do in the day. Developing habits means that you will start doing what you need to do without having to use willpower, as habits become automated in your brain. The more healthy habits you have, the more willpower you save throughout the day. In one experiment on willpower as it related to money management, a group of people were tasked to write down a detailed log of all their expenses for 4 months. Participants became more conscious of their expenses and developed better finances. But that wasn't all. They also made improvements on bad habits like smoking, drinking, eating junk food, and procrastinating. Developing willpower in one area made it a habit that they used for all aspects of their lives. Training your willpower comes down to methodically planning how you are going to respond to certain cues, or which routines to activate when a trigger happens. The cues are most often going to be obstacles or temptations that your willpower needs to overcome. For example, Starbucks employees are instructed that whenever they encounter a negative cue, such as angry customers, they should not think of how to respond and instead follow a company routine. Choosing how you react to something challenging ahead of time is essential. We may think that organizations have it all figured out, that their leaders sit around tables in top secret meetings, discussing their next strategies and making tough decisions, but that perception is mostly inaccurate. Most company decisions are the product of long-standing organizational habits and patterns, which individuals or CEOs themselves often don't really notice or realize. And the majority of these habits develop accidentally. Companies would not operate effectively if every single decision needed to be analyzed and discussed by teams or even made by individuals. Instead, routines and habits are in place, sort of like unwritten rules that govern the way things operate. Having routines in place leads to less uncertainty when incidents happen. However, this also means that it becomes hard to spot bad habits and fix them. Leaders need to work hard to single out patterns and habits in their organizations that may be leading to losses or bad performance, and try to cultivate new, better habits. Often, to spot bad company habits and be willing to change them, there needs to be a crisis. These emergency situations are bad in the short term, but beneficial in the long term as they help spot weaknesses in the company's truce. Good leaders know how to utilize a crisis to rebalance the company habits, thus making it a learning and growing opportunity. Companies are akin to battlefields in a civil war. All departments must coordinate, but in the end, everyone naturally will need to look out for themselves and have their best interests at heart. For a company to function smoothly, everyone must sacrifice some self-interest and make compromises. This is called a truce. Truces need to be balanced, and they're similar to keystone habits in that they're the source of development for other good habits. Your habits can be and are being manipulated by businesses to get you to spend money on their products. It doesn't mean you need to be paranoid, but knowing how to spot these tactics can help you figure out whether your behavior is being manipulated. For example, when you enter a grocery store, piles of fruits and vegetables are usually displayed in the front. When customers first pick up some healthy produce, they are more likely to pick up unhealthy snacks later because they feel they've made a healthy choice already. The reason popular songs all sound familiar to us is that the songwriters and producers intended exactly that. We crave what is familiar, so we tend to gravitate towards accessible songs that sound like everything we've heard before. This is how we are successfully sold new things disguised in old habits. This tactic makes it easier for us to accept them into our lives. Advertisements always seek to connect products to things we already have bought or experienced. With that said, not everyone behaves exactly the same, so habits aren't that easy to predict. We all have our individual ones. This is why there is such a race between companies to collect customer and user data. By analyzing our data, companies are able to figure out our less obvious patterns and use them to sell us more and more stuff. Companies also know that people don't keep the same habits for their whole lives. Studies have shown that major life events like marriage, divorce, or a new house or child can trigger big habit changes. Businesses use that information to market products tied to such life events. Habits are not limited to individuals or companies. Entire societies can have habits and patterns that govern the zeitgeist. Social habits are hard to pinpoint, as they encompass large numbers of people, but they are extremely powerful, as they are the drivers of social reform. Social habits are what brings protesters to the streets, fighting for a singular cause, despite them not knowing each other. Any social movement, just like developing a habit, is a three-part process. First, the movement sprouts from social habits of friendship, between people who are familiar with each other and have strong ties. Second, the movement grows according to the habits of the community it appeared in, because of the weak ties that connect neighborhoods and communities. Those are the ties between people who do not know each other personally, but belong to the same community or group. Third, the movement leaders rally the participants and create new habits that imbue everyone involved with a sense of identity and belonging to the movement. These three steps are crucial for a movement to gain ground and affect change. If there are no social habits backing up a movement, it is often bound to fail. Do not let the name weak ties fool you. They are actually very powerful. They're more important than strong ties when it comes to social change. For example, when Rosa Parks was arrested for refusing to give up her seat on a bus to a white man, a civil rights movement was born. The movement didn't succeed because she had good friends and family, but because of her ties with the Black community as a whole. Understanding habits is powerful knowledge. Not only does it give you freedom to change your bad habits, it gives you the responsibility to do so, for your sake and the sake of the circles you belong to. You need to make a conscious decision to spot your habits, because most of them are undetectable, like water to a fish. You also need to deliberately decide to change your bad habits into good ones. The process of spotting and changing your habits is not an easy or seamless one, and having knowledge about habits does not guarantee being able to exercise that knowledge. There is, however, a framework you can follow to help you. The framework consists of 4 elements: identifying the routine, experimenting with rewards, isolating the cue, and having a plan. Identify the routine. To diagnose and change your unwanted behaviors, you must figure out your habit loop. The first and easiest step is to identify the routine. It's the easiest because it's the most obvious aspect, it's the thing you want to change. Experiment with rewards. Since cravings drive our habits, we can try out different rewards and see how we respond. This helps us identify the real cravings driving our habits. Isolate the cue. This is the tricky part because in modern life, there is so much information bombarding us at any moment that it's hard to figure out what's triggering our habit loops. To help you find your cues, whenever you notice your routine kicking in, write down your location, the time, your emotional state, who you're around, and immediately preceding actions. After collecting this data several times and analyzing it, you'll be able to spot patterns and figure out what's triggering your habit loop. Have a plan. After figuring out your cue, routine, and reward, you can start working on changing your behavior. Plan what behavior you want to do when you encounter the cue. Make conscious choices to steer your habit the way you want. After a while, your new behavior will become a habit of its own.